This is Revelation Response, a podcast where we talk about who God is, what He's done in our lives, and how we can't help but respond in worship. We want these episodes to be an encouragement wherever you are on your faith journey, to pay attention to what God is saying to you, and to consider how you might respond. Now, here's my conversation with Tim Head. Hey, well, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Nate Souza, your host, and today I've got a longtime buddy of mine, Tim Head, on the show. Tim, thanks for being on here.
It's good to be here, man.
We're kind of in your old stomping grounds. I guess we'll get to that part of the story, but
yeah, totally.
Fellowship Franklin campus, and I came to Fellowship in 2015, and you had already been here for a while. So, like, maybe tell people that don't know who you are and like what you've done at Fellowship for starters.
We started serving at Fellowship around 2011. I was kind of a part of the Worship and Arts residency. It was like an internship under Rob Howard.
Okay.
At the time, he was the worship pastor. I started serving after that as a pastor of worship here for the Franklin campus. So we launched the second location.
Yeah.
And moved down to this exact space down here. And gosh, it's we were here for almost 8 years. So
in total, like 8 years. Okay.
Yeah. So helped launch Franklin, and it was hanging up soundproofing in the walls, and leading every Sunday almost. And man, it was a really exciting time. A lot of energy output.
Yeah, right.
And
work to be done.
And man, it was also a hard time because, gosh, I was just learning how to do ministry. It was my first full-time gig.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I had been serving most of my, from like middle school on.
Yeah.
But Fellowship was gracious in dealing with a really green but excited, worship guy. So
yeah. Did you like lead worship before you got here, like for youth group or like where?
Yeah. So I grew up in Washington State, Calvary Chapel, very similar to Fellowship in the way that expository teaching, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I would be serving every Sunday morning, Sunday night for the night service, and then Wednesdays. I was that kind of kid.
Church is open. There's Tim.
That was me. And in a similar way, I mean, that's when you launch a campus, you kind of have to, be open and available. And when I came out to Nashville, I went to Belmont University.
Okay.
And got my degree there, met Alyssa, my wife there.
Okay.
We've been married 13 years this summer.
That's awesome.
So
yeah. Wow. So that was going to be my next question. So you're out in Washington. You come out here for school.
Yeah.
And did you decide to stay, or was it like the job that kept you here? Or like,
well, it was actually Alyssa didn't want. She's from Texas.
Okay.
So she didn't want to move to the Northwest.
Gotcha.
And I didn't want to move to tumbleweeds and no mountains and stuff in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So we just both kind of made that decision because we both didn't want to move.
Yeah.
So it was kind of made for us.
As good a place as any.
And one of my roommates actually, his wife's dad helped launch Fellowship back in the day. So
that's cool.
So
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So he was the one that actually told me about the internship with Rob. So it was kind of crazy, just how it all happened. Yeah, it was crazy, man.
So what was your like general role in terms of leading worship and all that stuff? For people who may not know, like what that was like for you, like
totally.
How many weekends were you up? Like what did you do?
Well, yeah, I mean the life of a worship pastor. I think, my desire, one of my core desires, was really just to facilitate a space for people to encounter God.
Yeah.
And I happen to get to do that through songs, and that's primarily how I connected with God early on in my life. Like I would put on, Every Move I Make or Open the Eyes of My Heart and just like sit in front of the speaker and like learn how to play music.
Yeah,
like totally. I never had professional lessons until I came out to Belmont. It's kind of crazy.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I have always felt like a spiritual closeness with God through music, and it was just really special to get to do that on a week in and week out basis. You know, sometimes it's from the stage, you know, sometimes it is like leading the songs and, you know, kind of coaching the band and hearing from them too. And that creative process is super fun. But then a lot of what I got to do as well was back in the booth, you know, so I'm like, you know, hey, let's hit that light cue here and let's do these slides and, oh, what do you think about this background? Or, you know, how can we create an environment for this moment or whatever? So it was actually really fun. I got to kind of do the worship production side as well as the worship leadership side. And that's probably, you know, for those who aren't in full-time ministry, you know, you kind of wear a lot of hats.
No doubt.
You know? So it's that's part of the blessing and part of the curse of what ministry life is. You know, you're kind of asked to do one main thing, and then you see all the needs and like, oh shoot, I'll go up in the ceiling and throw up, you know, soundproofing and you know, or this is a more fun one. Oh yeah, well let's go taste the different coffee beans for the cafe. Like
somebody has to.
Someone's got to do it, you know. So
can try.
So
that's funny. You know, that's a good eye opener, I think, for people that. I mean, I meet people all the time that are like, you know, so you play songs on Sunday and then you pick those songs, and then what do you do with the other 35 hours? You know,
right?
So there's the hats is part of it.
Well, and that's I think my whole desire was when I was pastoring was again to facilitate that environment for people to encounter God. So it wasn't just a light cue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, hey, this can really facilitate a space for people, you know? And you know, this isn't just a musical build, you know, it's an experience, you know, and as much as we, you know, intellectual Westerners like to think that it's just something that's synapses are firing in our brains, that it's just like, it is an experience. Life is experience, you know, and God engages us, and then we can respond. And how do we respond? We respond with our life. You know? We respond with how we engage in the world, man. And you know, Sunday is just a place of respite for that, you know? And hopefully not too much of a distraction. Exactly, you know, that's one of the things that we talked about a lot early on is like, hey, how can we eliminate as much distraction as we can? Sometimes that's even me, you know, how can I not be a distraction? But sometimes it's how can we create an environment that's not a distraction, or, you know,
which points to the ultimate win for us, which is a person would experience God in this space and for us through music, like, you know, and nothing distracted them or took them away from that experience.
And at the same time, like music is inherently creative, you know? And so it should be engaging, you know, it shouldn't be distraction-less, but it should be maybe more direction-filled, I guess, you know?
That's interesting. You were so good in your role at pastoring people, you know, and that was just such a, like, as an onlooker, you know, like that was kind of new to the team, new to the area. When I first saw the way that you treated teams and people, and it went beyond like, I can't do this without you, which is a good place to start, you know, when you look at your volunteers and all that. But it, like, you said, hey, you just happen to be on my team because you play drums. I'm going to pastor you and love you and encourage you. And like, your team looked at you as their pastor, you know, sweet, like, man. And it was just such an awesome thing. And it kept grounding me too, because I think there's a tendency in church music and like professional worship meaning that it's all about the product. It's all about Sunday. It's all about like, and the debrief is, you know, normally points to that. How did Sunday go? How did the songs go? Like all this stuff. And I think you were always so good at like keeping it about the people, you know, the people in the seats, the people on the stage and all that. So I just wanted to say like that, you know, it's something that I really admired, you know, and
that's sweet, man.
And carry with me, you know, like in worship music. So,
well, I mean, that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, totally.
Right. I'm not sitting here just to like be in front of a microphone and, you know, like we show up to hopefully, in the same way that I said it earlier, facilitate a space for people to encounter God.
Yeah, totally.
And that's really through our lives, man. It's through our stories. It's through our own experience, strength, and hope, you know? And yeah, music was kind of the shepherd's crook that God gave me at that season of my life.
Could have been something else.
Could have been, yeah. And right now it's something else too.
Yeah, let's talk about that actually. So you're at fellowship for 8 years.
Almost 8. Yeah,
almost 8 years.
Over 7, yeah.
And then I remember I was obviously here, watching this happen, so like what happened in your spirit, or like what was going on in your life where you said, okay, this season is coming to a close. What's next?
Yeah, man. How much time do we have?
Yeah, big question. Yeah.
Well, it's, it's funny even just coming back into this space, man. Yeah. So much of my 20s were spent in here,
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting thinking about it like that.
Right.
And, man, I started, feeling really fatigued, like, I didn't know why, but it felt like the things that used to bring me joy just naturally, leading worship, doing, events like with our teams or, those kinds of things, they just kind of started to not produce the same amount of joy. And I didn't know what that was about, and so thankfully, I really think fellowship has always been a place of authenticity about where you are, where we don't have to, we all have the temptation to, by the way, but you don't have to say, hey, everything's good, man. It's all good. Like fellowship's always been a place that Alyssa and I have always said, from the platform that like, you can openly talk about, man, I'm really, really depressed in this season of my life, or, somebody died and it really shook me, or, I don't know about this. I don't know about that, and just, shout out to, Rob. He went to Lipscomb, and he got his certification as a spiritual director up there. It's a Church of Christ school in Nashville. Yeah. And he said he needed a guinea pig to get his hours, so like
your hand shot up.
Yeah. Part of the certification process is you need people to essentially like practice and, get your hours so you can get certified. Yeah. And my hand shot up, man. I was just like, I need some more discernment, And so in this kind of time of exhaustion, just getting to spend time, and how sweet is it that it's like my boss, that's just like, he's not trying to answer these questions for me. He's just trying to ask me good questions, and co-discern, like if you've never heard of spiritual direction, the best way to I've heard it said was it's a prayerful conversation to facilitate a greater awareness of the movement of God in your life. So it's a prayerful conversation to facilitate greater awareness of the movement of God in your life. Right. And growing up in evangelicalism, growing up, with obviously like a good Christian like upbringing, it's like there is kind of like the right and wrong, and the black and white. And yes, there are those things, by the way, but just having someone to hold the space of, like I'm exhausted and I don't know why. Yeah, I've lost life in things, and I don't. What's this about? And so it's kind of crazy, man. Like it's the blessing and the curse. It's like when you start to see more, you start to see more.
Maybe you didn't want to.
Yeah. So it was kind of the slow uncovering of myself, and man, that's everybody's time frame for that kind of like waking up process is different, and some people have that early in life and they get like God grabs their attention early, and some people it takes a traumatic or intense event. Mine was kind of like, growing up in a Christian family and working at a great church and having a ministry and having, a wonderful wife and, now 2 kids. But it was like this kind of slow dis-ease. Yeah. And I didn't really know how to put my finger on it, and so having that space was a really great starting point.
For sure.
And it was actually probably the first time in my like pastoral I guess career, maybe it's like vocation, because I did year one discipleship stuff. Maybe I did year two, actually. I did one of them twice. I can't remember which one it was. But credit. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, dude. No. But I was like, oh, you know what? I appreciate you saying what you shared earlier. It's like, oh, I realize that I am a pastor, a shepherd at heart. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I can do this through worship leading. Can do this through worship pastoring, that kind of stuff. But is there something that fits me even better than that? Yeah. And it was crazy sitting in that space with Rob and realizing like, oh my gosh, like this is the good stuff, Yeah.
So even just watching him be a spiritual director, helping you in that way, it was like you saw that and going like, I could do that. I would love to do that.
Oh yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, and it's like it's like when it's easy, when it's kind of natural. Yeah. It's like following the flow of the Holy Spirit. It's like I think that's how God's designed all of us, by the way. It's like when we're able to do something that's so like central to like our faith, but also like coupled with like a passion that we can like produce into the world, because God's created us all in God's image, which is God is a creator. God's never stopped creating. Yeah. And so what does that mean? We get to kind of also co-create too. And so this was like, ooh, it was almost like finding something that was even more specific. Oh, that's interesting. So at this time of like intense, like kind of exhaustion, self-inflicted, by the way, like fellowship was never asking me to just like be exhausted and burn out, but that's kind of my personality anyway. So take that to the next level, and I started to get even more depressed. I don't think I could have said it at that point. Yeah. That's the weird part. Yeah. I don't think I could have. I didn't know what was happening, but I said, hey, I want to get certified too. So I went to Lipscomb and got certified. And then I started to get even more burnt out. And I was like, gosh, this thing was awesome. And now it's what? So I was going to counseling for depression. I was like seeing my own spiritual director at the time. And then God put somebody in my life. My friend was like, hey, have you heard of Standing Stone? I was like, no, what's that? It's like, oh, it's a nonprofit that provides free, confidential, third-party care to ministry leaders and their spouses. And I was like, hey man, I'm like so toast right now. Just like, I'll take anything I can get, Yeah. So I was also seeing a Standing Stone guy, and he had 30 years of experience in ministry and had some really great insight and wisdom. And, yeah, spoiler alert, now he's my boss. But
a change occurred.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, so it was a intense season for me. It was sad and hard. Yeah. At the same time, it was like I had the opportunity to respond to that. We can either push those things down or hide them or overwork or overplay or over whatever. Or it was almost like my body was trying to get my attention. My depression was saying like, hey, this is hard, man. Yeah. Like what you're doing right now, like it's hard. Like you can't keep doing this. Maybe there's something better. I didn't know that it was trying to say that maybe there's something better. Yeah. Right. But I just took a step of faith, man. Yeah. And thank God, like I was able to choose a different passion, and now that I'm working at Standing Stone, where I provide free third-party confidential care to ministry leaders and their spouses. .com. Yeah, .com. It's like, that was a really big gift to be able to like choose to leave. Like some people are like totally ghosted, or like they're like terrible like exit, but fellowship was like, man, this is awesome. Like happy for you. This is totally in your wheelhouse. Like all of my volunteers said the exact same thing. Like, dude, this is like absolutely makes sense 100%. For you,
That was my first thought too. When I was like, what I shared earlier, I was like, as soon as you said the words to me about Standing Stone and what they did, I was like, of course. Yeah, right. Like, of course you're doing that. Like, that's like so like how God wired you and made you.
Yeah.
It's just, and I am a partaker of this service, and just like, I mean, our friendship, that's a whole nother podcast episode.
I know.
But, you know, the things that it provides to leaders in ministry is so unique.
Yeah, it is
so needed. Like that was one of the things I said right when we started was, how did I work so long without this?
Yeah.
You know, I needed like a friend, mentor, confidant mix in the person, you know? And so we had become such good friends and just hanging out and lunches and coffees and everything like that, that it was just, for me, it was such a wonderful blend of like, Tim knows me. I've known him for like almost 8 years.
Yeah.
And you also have the skill and the training, you know, to ask curious questions and to go into like, you know, to help me tend to my relationship with God, you know, like that's such a, I don't know, I can go off on that, but it's an amazing thing.
I think the what people might not understand is like when you're in full-time ministry, like fellowship was probably one of the better places to work when it came to like emotional health, spiritual health. But there was something that was so, like you said, unique about having a third party, like trusted, like confidential space who knows ministry, you know, and can like bear those burdens with you and point to like greater health and following Jesus, and also to have those hard conversations too, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, essentially it's like, okay, this is so, again, easy in the sense that like God's design for me, you know, and getting to do it more full time now is just, well, I guess I am doing it full time. Yeah. Getting to do it full time is a huge gift, you know?
Yeah. That's great, man. Let's fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was, it was cool. I heard a lot of revelation response language in there already, like how God was revealing this change and how you responded, and like, you know, that was already happening, you know. So let's fast forward a little bit. So now you're at Standing Stone, got a new job. We still get to hang out a lot, which is so fun. And then a whole nother, you know, change in your life took place. Bring us up to speed on like what that was, you know, maybe timeline wise.
Well, totally. You know, it's funny. It's like in that season of my life, I had a whole host of spiritual companions, you know, spiritual director, counselor, Standing Stone shepherd, friends, you know. Changing to Standing Stone was a huge gift. And then, dun, 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 2020, everybody's like, what's that?
What in the world happened?
What's that? What happened there? Man, COVID hit, and it really threw all of us for a loop. You know what I mean? And, you know, I'm working in a ministry that provides this care to ministry leaders. So like, gosh, I'm seeing like my pastors and pastors' spouses that we care for, like their lives just, their church is getting upended. The infighting, the anger, the bitterness, the focus on the minors instead of the majors, you know, conservative versus, progressive, race conversation. I mean, gosh, the list went on for 2020.
It really hit it once.
Yeah, it wasn't like one thing, you know, and maybe there's an invitation in that, you know, but my response to that was to hide, you know. It was to escape the reality. Like the pain was just getting too intense, you know? And, I was just kind of a normal drinker, you know, and enjoyed my fair share of fine collectible bourbons.
Yes.
And
of many varieties.
Yeah. And gosh, that was a fun, you know, season of life where, you know, just like, oh, let's go find this fun thing, or, you know, do that. And, I like those, you know, different flavor notes and all that kind of stuff. But man, it started turning into, for me, I wasn't just collecting bourbon. It was, I used alcohol to hide from the intensity and immensity of life, you know? And so it happened kind of fast for me, actually. Like I went from drinking a couple times a week to almost every day, And gosh, I don't know. It's funny. Like it was like 7 months of kind of more heavy drinking, you know, and it was about right after Christmas. I was playing tag with Eleanor, and I knocked a painting off the wall, and I had a couple drinks, you know, and it hit her square in the top of the head, you know.
This is your daughter.
This is my daughter. I'm sorry. Yeah. And that might have still happened if I was sober. I'm guessing probably not.
I can be clumsy.
Yeah. But gosh, it was kind of a wake up call. You know, it was like, oh my gosh, this is affecting me more than I thought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because like when you're in addiction, or in the addiction of controlling your life, which happens in many ways, shapes, or forms that we'll get into at some point probably. Yeah. Like you can't see it. You know what I mean? Like I was so overwhelmed. And again, I was a quote unquote good Christian boy. You know, I did all the things right. I was saved at 7 years old and, you know, was a pastor, worship pastor and all this stuff. And man, and now I'm working for a nonprofit that like provides this preventative care to ministry leaders and their spouses, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, praise God for my wife. And she's like, hey, Tim, I trust you, but I don't trust you when you're drinking, you know? And that was God's like, I woke up the next day and I was just like, okay, so either I can keep drinking and lose the trust of my wife, which would probably lead in divorce and lose my kids and lose my job and, you know, or I could try not to drink.
So you saw the writing on the wall, basically. Like, well, this is, you know, future.
Yeah. It was like, I didn't want to admit it, dude.
Yeah.
I did not want to admit that I was an alcoholic, you know, like that's so shameful to me, you know? And, you know, so I just kind of like ate a slice of humble pie and hopped on a AA Zoom. Like I searched AA because, you know, it was COVID. Like there's no in-person meetings, you know? And so I showed up to this AA Zoom and one of the guys in the chat said, hey, there's a more intentional group if you want to be a part of it. Like, here's the login. So he's like, but you have to say you're an alcoholic. And I was like, dude, I don't want to say I'm an alcoholic, but I'll go. So I go and my now sponsor, you know, I called this guy after the meeting who I, you know, resonated with. And I was like, I just don't know if I'm an alcoholic. And he's like, okay, well, the first step is we said that we're powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. It's like, well, I don't know if I'm an alcoholic. He's like, well, is your life unmanageable? I was like, oh, yeah, I guess so.
You're like, are we starting? Is this where we've started now?
Yeah, exactly.
Step one.
So what ended up happening was the slow process of showing up. You know, like it's one of those things, like I didn't really know if I was this or that or another thing, but I did know that my life was currently unmanageable in the state that it was in, you know, and
which is like kind of, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but like sort of like a fortunate thing, right? Like that this all happened before any big, you know, life event, man. Or like this is you basically saying, I can see where this is headed.
Yeah.
I'm just going to deal with it right now, which is a sort of like God's grace. Like, you know.
Dude, I mean, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
It was like, God, you know, what's it say in Hebrews? Jesus, he who being the very nature God humbled himself. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there in one of these meetings and I could almost like hear like God say, hey, Tim, you can be humbled or you can choose humility. Which one
Which one would you like?
Which one do you want?
Yeah,
you know?
Man, that's so
and
powerful.
It wasn't like shameful. It was just like, hey, which one do you want, man?
Yeah.
Like you can get hit up in the side of the head with a 2x4.
Yeah.
You know, you can get a DUI, let's say.
Yeah,
you know,
some other wake up call.
Like you could like, I don't know, like whatever the wake up call is. Exactly. I could go to rehab. I could lose my job, right?
Yeah.
And lose my wife and, you know, rock bottom, like bottom.
Yeah.
Or you could just choose it.
Talk about a revelation, man. That's like,
It was like, it was stupid, dude. Because I was like, okay, right. It was like, okay, so Jesus chose it. Mm-hmm. And if I say that I'm a follower of Jesus and have the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God inside me, then I can choose it too.
Yeah.
Oh,
totally.
Okay. Just like I choose to drink, I can also choose not to drink,
Yeah. And it's a response that I'm noticing in a lot of these interviews where the response is very optional, like I can go this way or that way. And I think that's part of the call, and me just sitting here listening to, all these interviews going like, pay attention to what God is saying to you and have the courage to say yes and to respond, because you can just shove it down and say, I feel God stirring me, but I'm just going to do nothing. And I think that's part of the encouragement is like, if it's God speaking to you,
totally
respond.
Well, and all of these things that I started to learn in recovery through the 12 steps and through the people in the program, we say this almost every day. It says, we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. And I think I always thought that I had to be perfect, like Christ is perfect,
Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody could exegete that for us and say, well, is it like perfection or is it like wholeness or goodness or like the full life or the wholehearted life or whatever? But I think I had this misnomer, that like I needed everything in my life to be perfect, when really I need to claim spiritual progress, which means like today I'm sober. Today I can show up to my family. Today I can say yes to these things, whereas like maybe I would want to hide from something like this in the past,
Yeah.
And it's those incremental, small steps of really showing up to the movement of God in my life,
So was it right away for you? I think I've asked you this question before, but as soon as you start the program, this is AA, 12 steps, the whole thing. Now you're in it. You have a sponsor.
Yep.
Was it like you're gradually getting out of this addiction? Like what was that like for you? Like how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, how? A day at a time.
As they say.
Dang it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Huh.
It's one day, dude. That's all we have. It's like all of these spiritual principles that I've heard all my life, and you start seeing the scriptures so differently. Like when Jesus is like, don't worry about, the birds of the air, the, flowers of the fields, like tomorrow has its own worries, and
you do see that different.
And it's like, oh, okay. So this isn't about not drinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I always thought that I would have this identity as an alcoholic, but I say I'm an alcoholic, just like any follower of Jesus would say, like, I'm a sinner in need of a savior, but even that's like shifted for me. It's like, I can, through the power of the Holy Spirit, like live a life of abundance through the power of the Spirit. And again, not perfection, because I'm not God. Because if I was God, then I wouldn't need God.
I would already be perfect.
I'm already there, you know? And I needed these tools. Like I've been in almost every Bible study, every discipleship program, even done spiritual direction and certified and all this. Like I should know, right? Like me of all people, Paul, is like, I was this, like the pastor and the this and the that, and, but like I needed to be broken, and we call it the gift of desperation, and one of the guys in the program was like, hey man, you can choose your bottom. You don't have to wait till your life implodes. And that was another huge gift too. I felt like God was saying, hey, Tim, by the way, you work at a nonprofit that preaches preventative care. What would it look like for you to see the writing on the wall? My grandfather was an alcoholic, so it's in your blood too. Yeah. So what if you stop now before like it's a train wreck, And so just kind of started showing up every day. I think that's really how it works, They say you do a 90 and 90. So you stay sober for 90 days and then you go to one meeting, so you stay sober, you go to a meeting and you call your sponsor. It's that simple, Sure. And then you start working steps, and the steps, you're powerless. And then the next step too is saying that like, I need a power greater than myself to restore my sanity.
Okay.
Because man, like I was trying to restore my own sanity by myself. I was using alcohol, but we all try to do it. That's all of our
control piece.
Yeah. All of our desires is to relieve, us of our intense lives, And then step 3 is, we turn our will and our lives over to God's care, and then we do a fearless and searching moral inventory. And
I've heard about that stuff.
I was like, no, thank you.
That's a toughie.
I thought it was just about not drinking. So you want me to my fears, my relationship history, my resentments, my grievances, I'm supposed to work on that stuff. Wow. It turns out this 12 steps were based on St. Ignatius's 12 spiritual principles. He's the founder of the Jesuits, the branch of the Catholics way back when that was more trying to embody the life of Jesus, And so he's hey, we need kind of some principles to go about doing that. And so the first is really, hey, we need a power greater than ourselves. Yeah. I can't manifest this change without God, And then we clean house. Dang.
Wow.
We clean house, man. Again, you see more. It's you turn the lights on and the lights have been off most of your life.
Yeah.
And you see your own house, so you get your own house in order is what they say. It's oh, there's that, there's this over here. And sometimes it can be super overwhelming, but that's why you just do it incrementally.
Yeah.
Easy does it. I'm not trying to change. I'm not trying to get sober and go vegan and exercise every day. And no, just don't drink.
Right.
And then, just show up to a meeting and you do this inventory and then you ask God to remove all of your defects of character,
So this is a very holistic, deep approach to,
yeah.
I mean, I would have thought every step is about controlling impulses.
Right. Right.
But
well, here's the crazy thing is early on, I prayed that God would take away the desire to drink. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I don't think if I wasn't doing anything, if I wasn't going to meetings and sharing honestly and having a sponsor that I talked with every day, just praying to ask God to take away something, it's kind of futile. I don't think God really wants to respond to that. Maybe God would.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But really, I think the desire just kind of left. Because now, again, my sanity was restored and I was turning my will and my life over to God. They say that's when we throw in the towel. But even as a sober person, I still want to grab that towel back. Right. I still want to take back that control, because I start seeing myself, I'm oh man, I'm super selfish. I'm really gluttonous. I don't want one thing. I want the best thing. I want 50 awesome drinks of coffee. It's everywhere. It's not just the booze.
That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's I don't have a regulator, for that kind of stuff. It's I want it and I want it now.
Right.
Anybody? Can anybody resonate?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you out
just
there?
Me? So then we move to, once we ask God to remove our character defects, we make amends, so we make amends to people that we've harmed. And that's just the part of practicing forgiveness within myself and with other people, regardless of their response, which again, that's a really hard thing for us. I would say us alcoholics, but I would say us humans, is that, I'm so concerned about the way other people think about me, and I want something outside of myself to make my insides okay. So I want your response to make my insides okay. I want my job to make my kids to make my insides okay. I want this, and that, whatever it might be, and so we make amends and we say we're sorry. We don't explain why we're sorry. We don't defend why we're sorry. We just say, I was wrong. I'm sorry. And I love you. And then we just leave it,
Wow.
That's one of the hardest things.
It sounds like a super
well
thing,
in my time already doing it, which has only been the past couple months, actually, it's just been super sweet, and then you move out of that to practicing greater conscious contact with God, through prayer, meditation, showing up, being of service, and then helping. The last one is helping another alcoholic to achieve sobriety. Always being of service, always relying on a power greater than myself. But then also they say the root of every alcoholic or addict is low self-esteem. I didn't really view myself with much value, And we probably say that from the stage or, from, well, God loves you so much, but I think I didn't really believe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like at a core level.
Yeah. Intellectually, I totally did,
yeah.
But I think I needed to say like, hey, God values me. I need to start valuing me.
Yeah.
And putting alcohol in my system is not valuing myself because it makes me want to hide,
Wow.
And then you start slowly uncovering all the other things that I use to do that same thing.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I remember you saying that like, the fixation on drinking slowly shifts to the fixation on control or suppressing things or, I can do this on my own sort of thing. And it happened to be drinking. Could have been anything.
Absolutely.
And that's that's where it's intersected in my life. It's like we're meeting, talking about my addictions, talking about things that I struggle with. And I think, well, I don't have much to learn from 12 steps. That's like something separate than that. But as you bring it into those sessions, I have learned so much just about how humans are wired.
That's it.
How addicts or not addicts, like how we yearn for things and long for things and want to make our own lives the way we want them to be by like white knuckling it, and making it happen. And it's like, then you start to see like, and the church has been really good in like the wholehearted studies to do this, to like move away from, what do they call it? Behavior management, just stop that thing, to getting underneath it, and digging a little bit. What's causing that? Like yes, you did X, Y, and Z, but like, why did you do that? Like what's behind all that? And so I've heard you say a couple times, like the AA thing is not a Christian thing. It's not like only for Christians. Like a lot of people can find a different higher power, or whatever it is. But I've just found it so helpful in the spiritual direction side of our relationship.
Yeah.
To bring that in, and say, look, man, this is like applicable in all these ways, not just in this one, specific way. So yeah, it's been an eye opener for me for sure.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think God will get our attention in whatever ways that God can. And the funny thing is, God is also so generous that God will never force us to do something. You know what I mean? Like, I think God tried to get my attention multiple times around this issue. It just took this one, to make, it's drawing like blood on her little forehead, and I was like, oh no, like I didn't know.
Something like that like sticks with you.
Yeah. And honestly, man, I'm lucky. I'm really lucky. Yeah. I'm really lucky. Like people's lives can get destroyed, over this substance or many other or workaholism, like never home for your families, like presence, dude. That's what I've realized. It's like, I don't want to show up to my life. I don't.
Right.
I'm so afraid.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to mess something up. I'm afraid that I'm not good enough. I'm afraid that if I don't enforce my control over this situation, then it will it won't go the way I want it to, or the way it should, quote unquote, go. Yeah. Instead of just like showing up to my life and like practicing the presence of God in my life. And that's it's so funny. I used to use this call to worship, which I love this passage. It says, be filled with the Holy Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, making melodies in your hearts to the Lord. But I purposely would skip over the first part because, coming in on Sunday morning, the last thing you want to hear is, hey, everybody, do not be drunk with wine, for that is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. Yeah. It's kind of like, no, dude, let's cut off that like drunk wine stuff and just start with being filled with the Spirit.
It's a downer.
But it's, womp, womp. The hungover people are coming, dude, shut up, man. Yeah. This music is so loud.
They're like, leave me alone.
Anyway, so.
Yeah, you skip over that part.
Yeah, but I think what God started revealing in my recovery work is like, do not be drunk with wine, for that is dissipation. Like dissipation, I started digging into that word. It's like, it's literally like a pushing down or a suppression of something, So do not be drunk with wine, for that is dissipation. I think you can put like, do not seek to assert control over your life because that will dissipate like the movement of the Holy Spirit. If you try to be God, it will push God down. It will. It's just like a natural pull, you know?
Yeah.
But what does it say? It says, but be filled with the Spirit, you know? And so if I can like invite God into my life and slowly but surely like turn over these things to God, it's almost like the natural response is I will be filled, you know? And like the overflow of my heart will be like songs and hymns and spiritual songs and like making melody in my heart to God. And I know it sounds kind of like, I don't even know how, it sounds like it makes sense to me. It's like my heart literally just like makes melody, dude. It's
like,
just
at that point, of course it does. You know, it's an outflow.
It's just
overflow.
like, and like there are days that I'm there, dude, and it's like, oh my gosh. Absolutely. You know, and there are days still as I'm a sober person, like not quote unquote, not drinking, but like I still want to assert control over my life.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Like, and so I dissipate the movement of the Holy Spirit. And so, yeah, God happened to use drinking to get my attention, but like he's now getting my attention with my whole life, dude.
Yeah. No, it seeps out into that's, I think what I was hearing when we would meet is like, this doesn't stop at one issue. And even if what I heard from you was like, even if you get a hold of that issue, guess what's right behind it?
Yeah. The next one,
you're still you.
Yeah.
And you still operate this way. And so God is freeing me and you from that tendency to want to do it all ourselves and control, you know, and wherever that might show up, you know, and it's so open and so general. I think that people can insert their own stories into that and say, hey, I don't like alcohol, but man, do I have a problem with looking at images or, you know, anger or God, you know, whatever it is for their life, they can't stop.
Yeah.
You know, it's that feeling of inviting Jesus into that space has been such a big thing.
Totally.
I've learned from our conversations is the tendency to hide. I have that same tendency. And when I want to hide, it's because I want to clean all that up and I want to like make sure that God doesn't see that part of me.
Yeah.
But that move to turn back to him and say like, will you come to where I am in all this stuff?
Totally.
You know, it's scary and it seems like counterintuitive, you know, like I shouldn't want to do that. But that's where I have started to see freedom and started to see change. Is like, he wants that. He doesn't want to wait for me to go back after it's done. Cause like I will never get that clean enough, you know? And so like you said before, I can only do this through the power of the Spirit. That's the only way this happens. One day at a time, you know? Yeah. And so, man, it's a deep, deep well of change and ways of thinking and just, you know, even just hearing you go through a lot of the steps today, it's like,
totally,
man, that is like so rich. And I would never have known, like, you know, to go through all that and to hear it all. So, thanks for sharing that. I mean, one of my questions, I feel like you've already answered really well, but want to give you another chance.
Yeah.
Like, what God's revealed about himself through this whole process. And there's been so many times where you said, I heard God say this to me, or I heard God push me this way, or in a lot of response, you know. But is there anything else you want to add to that? Like maybe like what God revealed about himself, like who is God to you now, having gone through this? I mean, it's been the arc of your story, right? Like, you know, doing music and then working in a church and then working for Standing Stone and now sobriety. Yeah. You know, maybe just today, maybe that's an easier way of answering it. Like, what is God revealing these days? You know,
it's an unsuspecting inner resource. That's what God's like to me. It's like where I needed a substance outside of myself to make me okay, you know, or then God's working on approval from others from outside of myself, or, you know, it's like, oh, like the resource is in me, you know, it's like right here, like God, you know, we say it all the time, like Emmanuel, God is with us. It's like, oh yeah, cool, man. Like, and then we go and do, you know, live our lives without God. Right. Yeah. But like God is like always there. Like, what do we say? It's like like you just have to knock at the door, and God is so kind and generous, man. And I think the unsuspected inner resource is so funny. I filled out my taxes. Okay. So I filled out my taxes. I'm super pumped. Like getting a little like refund and then, I was like, oh, this is taking a little long, and I was on a call for my work, I was on a call, and I love going on a walk when I'm on calls because it helps me center around the person and focus, and I just grabbed the mail, right, like as I was going inside, and I grabbed the mail, and what do I see? But like an IRS letter, bro, and I'm like, oh no, like I filled out my taxes wrong. They're going to audit me. My life is falling apart, And dude, here's the thing. It's funny. I was going to open it.
Right.
I'm on a call, dude.
Yeah.
I'm, again, the spiritual director, pastor, standing stone guy. And like, I'm caring for this person.
Right.
And like, I could either choose to distract myself and not, again, practice the presence of God with this person.
Yeah.
Or just put it down and wait.
Right.
And dude, it was like I had to take every ounce of. I'm serious, dude.
I know.
I was like, God, I want to be. I was praying in my head because I didn't want to pray this out loud.
Yeah.
It's like, God, I don't want to open this. Like, help me not open this today. Like right now, And that's how it shows up in my life now. It's like, oh, that's like how God is working my quote unquote program. This is like my spiritual program in action. It's not opening up an IRS letter.
Yeah.
What? Like, that's how it shows up. It's like those little things that like I would have compulsively, oh shoot, I want to figure this out right now.
Right.
But dude, if I would have opened that up and said, you're going to get audited, like it would have ruined that call with that person. Sure. I would have been checked out, stressed out. And so I think God is like showing up in those. Thankfully, I'm not getting audited. I just put in some information wrong, and they just need me to resend something
after the phone call.
Yeah. So okay, it's fine. I did open it up, but isn't that funny, man? It's like I'm able to respond to my life in the moment.
Yeah.
Which again, the moment is literally all we have, dude.
It's just a series of moments back to back. Yeah.
And that's what the beauty of this life is. It's like, what is God? I mean, gosh, God does this I think it's for God's glory and for my good.
Yeah.
Because God is glorified by what? My life.
The whole thing.
My life, man.
Yeah.
And like when God sees me like flourishing and free and like, dude, God's like pumped,
Yeah.
Yeah. And if, let's say I went out and drank after this, God would be sad, because I would be dissipating my life. But would God say, sorry, dude, see you, bro? No. What does God say? Just like the program says, hey man, keep coming back.
Yeah.
Keep coming back.
Yeah.
We say it after every meeting, keep coming back. It works if you work it, keep coming back.
Yeah.
And there are people in our group that there's different AAs for different people, but there are even some people that say, hey man, come drunk. I don't care. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking.
Yeah. Not perfection.
Spiritual progress rather than, hey, you're at a meeting. Good for you, man. You might be drunk, but hey, you're here. Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's how God shows up, dude. Like God shows up to the tax collector.
Beautiful,
God shows up to the prostitute. God shows up to even his the reason why he came, his Jewish brothers and sisters, and even they turned him away. Like, what?
Right.
He looks back at the city and he says, I wanted to come put my arms around you like a mother hen does to her chicks, but you wouldn't let me.
Yeah. Dang.
No wonder Jesus cried.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think God is mad at us, dude. I mean, you can take for what you will. God is just so sad that we wouldn't let him.
Dude.
We don't let him. I want to be God, dude. That's what it is.
You put yourself in that place.
Yeah.
Man, this is like a really subtle thing, but when you were talking about the tax form in the mail and on the phone call and everything, what I loved about that was you prayed about it. You didn't just want to not open it and then show God that you were good. That's what I would have done. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would have just said, like, I can do this. I can power up and not open the letter. And then later I'd be like, wasn't that good, God? Like, did you see how I did that?
Look at how awesome I am.
Yeah. But man, like, that's my area of growth right now is like, in the moment, as silly as that seems, I don't want to open this letter.
Yeah.
It's like, well, did you have to pray that? Like, no, I got to pray that. God wanted to, he wanted me to engage him in the moment like a friend, like I have a real relationship with him, and it's such a beautiful invitation to me to like treat God like that. Like, how can I make God more, like you said, he's constantly available. He's closer than our skin.
Well, dude, exactly. And it's not for me to be perfect. It's for me to be present.
Yeah, totally. With him. Yeah.
With him and with somebody else.
Yeah.
Like what a detriment to that other person that I was on the call with. Like, I'd be robbing him of my presence, which in a way is God's presence. I'm not saying I'm God, but, God's ministering through this prayerful conversation. So, like, if I'm not showing up, like, then I can't, participate in this beautiful work.
Right,
you know? But then it goes the same, like, with picking up my kids from school. It's weird. It's like, it's like this program has put flesh on my faith,
Absolutely.
Like, it's that incarnational, like, embodiment of life. And dude, I don't know. I want to take this recovery work and kind of zoom it out from maybe a specific, well, obviously it's good to have it dialed into a specific thing.
Yeah.
But it's not just about not drinking,
Exactly.
It's a life of worship, dude. It really is, man.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's just easy.
Yeah.
Okay, let me say that it's simple.
That's a good distinction.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yes.
But that's why we need others.
Totally.
I have a sponsor. I have a sponsee. I have a program every day. I can phone in at 2:00 every day.
Always available. Yeah.
Yep.
Dang. Yeah. And that's been a whole nother thing that we didn't really get to, but to have done all of this in community, it's not meant to be done in isolation or in private. Like, you're talking to them, you're calling them, they're asking questions. Like, you're going to these, the meetings that you go to. It's like,
well, and that's should be in my mind, the purpose of the local church. It's like, and I see it. We've all had glimpses and even probably seasons of that in our lives. Recovery has been such a consistent place for me to do that. And some people, it's their community group.
Yeah.
But it's in the same way. It's like, here's all these resources. Yeah. Let's say it's your church, right? Here's all these resources, but impetus is on the person to show up.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. God can use God used a donkey
right.
to show up.
Yeah.
So God can literally use everything, and just to get my attention. And God is always in pursuit.
Yeah.
That's what all I have to do is just show up and be honest, bro. That's the linchpin of recovery.
Yeah.
It says many of us do recover if we have the capacity to be honest. And I started realizing, like, I just am not honestly showing up.
Wow.
And if I can honestly show up, I mean, you probably experienced that relief of like being honest with somebody over a coffee or with your wife, like, or even on a Sunday, like, oh man, when I can like show up and be honest in whatever my life is.
Yeah.
I think that, again, because you're showing up and being present,
right.
God's there anyway, but
no. Yeah. It's on you when you show up.
The impetus is the honesty.
You can use it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well, dude, I mean, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today and talk through all that. It's just like, it's a story I've seen in real time,
That's cool.
And as an onlooker, was just so, I mean, proud is not the right word. I was just so like watching you, even when you left fellowship to do Standing Stone, I was like, of course that would happen. Watching you go through the sobriety thing, I'm just like I needed that. I needed to see that because of what it did in my life, and like I know other people have been impacted by the ripple effect, which is like God's grace, like that would like help other people. Like you said, the last step is like helping people do this, like not keeping it for yourself. Yeah. And so thanks for your openness and honesty today. And
absolutely, man. It's so funny when you asked me to share. My initial response was no.
Right.
Absolutely not. Yes. But again, that's because I want to hide. I don't want to be honest.
Yeah.
No, man. No way. you know? Right. But my sponsor had told me, you say yes to your program, you know? And for me, that's saying yes to my faith and, you know, making much of God and also just like practicing greater awareness of the movement of God in my life, what spiritual direction is, you know? So yeah, so when you said yes, I wanted to say no, but then I was like, no, absolutely, you know? And, you know, if there's anybody listening for this and, you know, you feel like the movement of God saying like, hey, like, I want you to be more free, you know, maybe that is to stop drinking. Maybe that is to stop overworking. Maybe it is to get out of isolation. I mean, that's Genesis, man. Like we have it. It's all there. And then what? We want to be God. We want to control. We want to know everything. We want to know. It's the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
It's right there at the beginning.
Hey, I want to know it all, God. So I'm going to go take it for my own. And I'm going to share it with my own. And hey, we're going to do this. And gosh, dude, like, oh, that's baked into all of us, you know? And so I have to show up every day to fight against it. Not fight, like, but to, you know, I guess fight is fine. But like, I need a power greater than myself.
Yeah.
And then it's fun because then you're just participating with the Spirit.
Totally, yeah.
Like, I've always wondered, like, hey, what are the works of the Spirit? Like, what are the, you know, manifestations of God? It's like, oh, there it is. It's my life.
Yeah, right.
God shows up to you disguised as your life. Somebody said that to me, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I've been looking all over for it, but here it is, right here.
I've been experiencing
It's me. It's my life, dude. And now I can soberly experience it, you know? And what a gift, man. Like, so yeah, thanks for asking me, man, you know?
This is a very like rich conversation.
Yeah. So. And I don't know. I'm grateful, dude. I'm grateful to be a recovering alcoholic, you know? And it's just, I don't know, man. Like, God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free, and not like the happy clappies, because life is hard, you know, but like to experience true joy.
An abundant life.
An abundant life, man. Absolutely. Yeah. So I could keep talking about it for years. So and maybe I probably will, but not in this podcast.
Next episode.
Next episode.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening today, and I hope that it was an encouragement to you. And
thanks for asking questions. And
you got it, man.
Holding this space, and excited for what God's been doing in fellowship. It's fun to be a cheerleader, bystander.
Yes, looking on.
Yeah, and just it's so cool to see the flourishing that's happening there too.
Yeah, so, awesome.
Yeah,
cool. Well, we'll see you in the next episode.
Revelation Response is produced by Fellowship Bible Church and Fellowship Songs. You can check us out online at fellowshipbiblechurch.org or by searching Fellowship Songs wherever you stream your music. Also, please leave us a like and give us a follow to hear more episodes like this. Thanks for listening.